HCAM folks ready? Great, thanks. Emily, you ready to record? Good evening. This is the Hingham Zoning Board of Appeals. It is January 11th, 2018. Time is 7:06. Welcome to our meeting. The first item on our agenda is Riverstone LLC. This is a continuation from our prior hearing of December 21st, 2017. The location is off Ward Street. This is an application for a comprehensive permit under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40B, to construct a 36-unit condominium development, including 9 affordable units on approximately 6.7 acres of land located in Residence District B. We have a revised site layout plan dated December 20th, 2017 that depicts 32 units as opposed to the original application, which was for 36 units. Who do we have for the applicant this evening? You're welcome to stay there or sit up here, whatever you prefer. I'd like to make some preliminary comments. First, addressed primarily to the folks who are sitting out there. I'm aware that a number of concerned residents have been submitting comments to the Board of Selectmen or to other boards. I would encourage you to make sure that your comments are directed to this board, to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Under state law, we are the board that needs to make the determination about this application. So if you're sending comments to other boards, they may or may not get to this board. So please make sure that you address your comments, written submissions, whatever you think is important and relevant to this application, that you submit them to the Zoning Board of Appeals to our main office on the second floor here. Second request to the folks assembled is that the comments actually be directed to the Zoning Board and not to our peer reviewers or other hired consultants we have. They really are not authorized to speak to you or to anyone else about this project unless they get express permission from the zoning administrator. So please make sure that if you've got comments or questions, that you address them to the Zoning Board of Appeals, to Emily, who is the zoning administrator, and she'll make sure that this board is made aware of your comments, and to the extent that they should be directed to our peer reviewers, we will make sure that that happens. So please, it'll help us as well as help yourselves to follow that procedure. I guess the third comment I want to raise is to the applicant. We had our last meeting, which was on December, get the date right, December 21st. And the purpose of that meeting was to receive additional plans that the applicant had told us were going to be submitted. This board was very disappointed that what we got was a single sheet of paper. I'm not sure that we would have convened a meeting of this board to receive a single sheet of paper. It was our expectation, it was my understanding that we were going to receive the plans. We talked about time schedules to make sure that we would be able to proceed on an expedited basis to meet the statutory time requirements associated with this application. And we were going to receive the materials, review it, and then make sure that the appropriate peer reviewers got the information and we could proceed as needed. Unfortunately, what we received was, as I said, a single sheet of paper, and in my view and in the view of this board, that was not sufficient. That was not what we expected, and we have a tight time schedule. We spent a lot of time at the last meeting talking about what the time schedule would be, asked for extensions. The applicant at that point was reticent about extending the deadlines. So we intend to proceed in accordance with state law to make sure that the information that we receive is all that we need in order to proceed, and when it's not as required, we are going to make that point for the record, and we'll do our best to complete our review. So with that, I will note that we received, subsequent to our December 21st meeting, additional materials, which have been very helpful and have been given to our peer reviewers as appropriate. And I would like to proceed at this meeting to have the applicant present any additional information they would like to present at this meeting, then to hear from our peer reviewers to the extent that they have had the time to review the materials. And then I know that there are some members of the various town boards, town officials who are here. At that point, I'd like to recognize them to see if they have any comments or questions, and then finally open it up to members of the public. So with that, I would turn it over to the applicant, and please introduce yourselves for the record. And before I proceed, and I should have said this at the beginning, so everyone is aware, these proceedings are being recorded by HCAM and by the Zoning Board of Appeals office. So with that, I will turn it over to the applicant. And again, please introduce yourselves for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Warren Baker. I represent the applicant. Representing the applicant is Brian Murphy, member, as well as the project engineer, Brad McKenzie from McKenzie Engineering Group.
Let me just, do you have any other experts or consultants?
Not tonight. We do have other experts, Jim Kelleher, our architect,
okay.
as well as Ron Mueller from our traffic expert, and we have submitted materials from them in the application. There's also a traffic report.
Right.
So you were familiar with them. They have appeared before, but they are not here tonight.
Okay, so you've got 3 people this evening. Right.
Yes. Just to, and I think that one of the earlier meetings, it was said that we wanted to sort of, where were we and where are we at this point in time? I think you gave most of that information. I'll just supplement it by going back just a little bit in the fact that the application was filed on March 29th of 2016, and it did propose a 36-unit condominium development on 6.7 acres. After the interlocutory appeal ending in October 31st of 2017, the proceedings obviously were then able to proceed. And after some discussions, the applicant proposed to the board's request and our desire to make some revisions and to provide further information. Those plans were submitted, as well as grading and drainage plans, drainage calcs, stormwater management report, and some other matters that are continuing to be supplemented and brought back in. But generally, the project itself goes from 36 to 32, so therefore the number of affordable units would go from 9 to 8. There is a widening of Viking Lane. There was a reconfiguration of the layout in the streets. There was access added to Auburn Circle. There were some turnarounds added, particularly for fire apparatus, and some sidewalks were placed in.
Excuse me if I can just interrupt. This is the first I've heard that it's going from 9 to 8. Have you submitted anything else?
No, right. Excuse me. No, right at this point in time, only because we've moved it down. Our requirement is 25%.
Right.
That would move to 8. Just in terms of calculation, I'm not sure that, yes.
Okay, I mean, that is the minimum requirement.
Yes.
We understood the application was for 9 affordable units. So having shifted it, you have the right to go below, but this is the first that I've heard that you actually are going to go down to the 8 units.
That's why we're bringing it up.
Okay.
And so the best way, I think, to approach is to have the engineer outline what it is rather than me necessarily summarize it, so I would hand it to Brad McKenzie.
For the record, Brad McKenzie, McKenzie Engineering Group, 150 Longwater Drive in Norwell. I thought it might be helpful to give a general overview of the existing site conditions. We haven't met with the public, really, and talked about the engineering issues for well over a year. The plan that is up on the screen is the existing site conditions. And to refresh everyone's memory, it's about 6.7 acres in size. It's comprised of, the project was permitted as a subdivision in the 2000s, and the applicant has added 30 or 70 Ward Street to the project here, an existing single-family home. So in aggregate, it's about 6.7 acres. 6 lots were approved in connection with the approval of the Viking Lane subdivision. The roadway is presently 600 feet in length, with supporting infrastructure, utilities, water, and underground electric telephone cable. And in this vicinity, there is a stormwater detention facility that was built to accommodate the impervious surface of Viking Lane and ultimately the build-out of the 6 lots. There is a wetland resource, a bordering vegetated wetland in this area. It was redelineated in 2015 by our wetlands botanist, Brad Holmes of ECR. Essentially 2/3 of the site, this portion of the site drains towards the detention basin. This portion of the front third of the site drains back through a closed drainage system towards Ward Street. And on the west side of Ward Street, there is a stormwater drainage easement here that is accepting the runoff from the improved portion of Viking Lane, as well as some of the a portion of Ward Street in the vicinity of the project frontage. The plan that is on the screen is the recently revised site development plan consisting of 32 units, as Attorney Baker mentioned. It was downsized from 36 units. The project was generally reconfigured. You can see that there's now a loop in the northern portion of the site. There's a through connection to Autumn Circle from Ward Street, and there was a turnaround here that Warren mentioned for emergency vehicles. The reconfiguration resulted in, I think, an increase in buildings from 10 to 13. However, a lot of those buildings, those 4 and 5 unit buildings, or 3 and 4 unit buildings, were replaced with 1 unit or detached single family structures, 1, 2, and 3 here. The roadway is about 1,800 lineal feet, and the project will take advantage of the water main that's been installed. The proposal is to loop the water main back out to Ward Street here. Of course, there'll be an extension of the other underground utility systems. The stormwater management area here, this detention basin, will be enhanced, enlarged to accommodate the additional impervious surface for the project. And a portion of this portion of the roadway network here will continue to drain through the closed drainage system out to Ward Street and eventually to the drainage easement area on the west side of Ward Street, further down, further to the north. It's important to note that the stormwater management system will fully comply with the Mass DEP stormwater management regulations, all of the standards and the regulations, and a construction phase, eventually a construction phase and post-development phase operation and maintenance plan for the system will be submitted for review to the board. The wastewater system is located here within the open space area in the interior of the loop. It has been relocated from an area that is here, which is directly adjacent to the property that was the Harton property. We thought it was more appropriate here so that there wouldn't be any potential for impact to their septic system to the north. It's important to note that Attorney Baker mentioned some of the other changes. Of course, we have the through road. We added sidewalks on all the roads as requested. And it's important to note also that a lot of these revisions were made in response to concerns from the planning board and public safety officials. There was a concern about a dead-end roadway network. This is the former plan, the plan that was originally filed with the board, and there was a dead end. There was the concern was that this was exceeded 800 feet, which was the standard that the fire department cited. So we now have eliminated the concern. There's a short dead-end roadway here that is less than 800 feet with a turnaround, and again, adding sidewalks. And again, the increase in pavement width in response to fire department concerns and other departments from 18, which is the current paved width, which is the width that was approved by the planning board for the 6 lots, that has been increased on the proposed development plan to 20 feet wide. I think we've touched on all of the plan revisions that were made in connection with the most recent filing over the past week or so. So I guess with that, unless Warren, you have anything to add, we can open it up to the board for questions.
Just to make sure that we're all on the same plan, we're looking at the one that was revised as of January 8th, 2018? Is
That's correct.
Okay. Council, did you have anyone else wanting to speak about any revisions at this point, or?
No.
Okay.
I think that it might be most valuable to engage in questions and maybe even peer review for some discussion.
So, Emily, who among our peer reviewers are here?
Patrick Brennan from Adjournment, our civil peer review engineer is available.
Okay, anyone else?
No, Jeffrey Dirk is not. We're still awaiting a supplement to the traffic impact and access study that was submitted prior to, in the earlier part of the application.
Okay, great. Pat?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pat Brennan with Amory Engineers, Duxbury. I'm the peer reviewer for the zoning board on this project. I was initially reviewing that one-page sheet, the December 20th layout sheet, which is that layout, but there's no utilities or grading or anything shown on it. So I was preparing a letter on Tuesday when the supplemental information came in, which was the additional sheets to the plan set and a preliminary hydrologic analysis. I haven't had time to go through those because I was actually preparing this letter when those came in. So just to go through quickly the points from my letter and taking a quick glance at what had come in on Tuesday, I'll just make a couple of comments on that. My first comment is, I know with the previous list of waivers, I don't believe it was updated with the new information that came in. I always like to see the applicants provide a list of waivers that explains the exact regulation from which relief is being requested so the board fully understands the implications of granting those waivers. Because many times they just ask for a blanket waiver from some bylaw and you don't know what part of that bylaw they actually need the waiver from. So then with the updated plans, like I said, they did provide a grading and drainage plan with this revised set, a utilities plan. There is no landscaping shown in the plans. There are construction details. I don't know if there's exterior lighting proposed, but there's no exterior lighting or photometric plan. As I mentioned, they did submit a preliminary hydrologic analysis. I took a quick look at that. That does have like it says, the hydrologic analysis. It doesn't have the hydraulics of the pipe network in the system. And then there is some soil information provided in the hydrologic analysis, but there's not enough. They have, every single one of these roofs is going into a subsurface infiltration system. And based on the soil information that they provided, the water table on the site is all over the place, up and down. From one hole 30 feet to the other, there's a 4-foot change. So you really need to know what that water table is at the exact locations of those systems to make sure that they're going to work. So we don't have that information at this point. They need to provide documentation to demonstrate that there will be adequate water supply available for domestic use and for fire protection. Usually want a hydrant flow test out there to make sure that there'll be plenty of fire flow available. And then sizing calculations for the septic soil absorption system to make sure that there's enough room in the space that they set aside for both the soil absorption system and the required reserve area, which is the same size as the system, so you need twice the size when you're putting in a new system. Like I said, I haven't had a chance to go through these plans in detail, so I'm sure as I go through that, I will submit a report to the board probably in the next week or so with a lot of my technical comments. These are more general comments. There was one thing that I noticed, and I noticed it was in Mr. Dirk's letter as well. The sidewalks that they propose in this set of plans are right against the back of the Cape Cod berm. The Cape Cod berm does not provide enough of a buffer from a vehicle traveling to a pedestrian, so my recommendation, as well as Mr. Dirk's, was either vertical curb or some type of a grass strip in between to provide some type of a separation so that you can tell that the sidewalk, you know, there's a separate sidewalk there and it's not part of the road. All right. That's about it at this time.
So it sounds like you've had a chance to, well, today is what, the 11th, and this is the set that came in on the 8th.
It came in on the 9th.
Oh, it came in on the 9th.
Yeah.
So you're going to need some time to review that, and then there's additional items that you're still waiting for in order to complete your analysis.
Yes, that's correct.
Emily, do you have any comments on this, or? Okay. Thank you. Joe or Larry, you have any questions? At this
Yeah,
point?
I have a few questions regarding Mr. Baker's letter, and it kind of goes to what was just brought up, but like he responds to local concern letters, and it's just kind of, for example, the sewage disposal system. You say that it's really not required to design that at this time under 40B, and that it's done before building permits are submitted or approved. So that doesn't make sense. I don't think that that's true, but I'll have counsel talk on the legalities of that. Most of the 40B developments that I've been a part of on this board, we've always had, a conservation submission, just to, run things by them. Do they agree with the line? I think it's, the state regulates wetlands, so you can't just say we don't have to deal with that. That's my opinion. And Mr. Dirk mentions in his letter that he thinks that the roads are supposed to be 24 feet wide in accordance with, Mass Highway Department for the amount of units that you're proposing. And, I just personally think that with some of these comments that, your development's too dense.
Joe, do you have any?
I don't have anything at this time, no.
Okay.
I'm going to a chance to review all this and probably have some more questions at the next meeting. So.
Are there town officials here who would like to give us comments? And if you could just come up to the mic, please, and introduce yourselves.
Good evening. Kirk Schultz. I'm a member of the Hingham Board of Health.
Do you need to raise the mic, or are you okay with
I
that?
probably do.
Thanks.
Typically, when we've seen 40B developments in town that are in the areas that are not sewered, they come before the Board of Health just to kind of introduce the concept and explain what it is they're thinking of doing. And that's helpful because we give guidance to applicants when they come in before the town to explain to them what our perspectives are for the various projects. And I noticed with this particular project, we didn't hear anything from them. The first that I saw something on this happened to be this afternoon. And so from the Board of Health perspective, there are a couple of questions that I'd like to ask. I don't know if I'm able to ask them now, or do I go through the chair? But one of the things I didn't see on the plan was the number of bedrooms on the project. Because as you mentioned, the septic system is not designed on the number of units, the number of affordable units at that. It's designed on the number of bedrooms. So I would just ask
Let
that.
me stop there. Do we have a bedroom count for the proposed project here?
The system was designed for 90 bedrooms.
Right, but what is the bedroom count of what you plan to build?
I believe that's the count.
So it's 90 bedrooms?
Is it in the application?
Yeah, so you should revise some of the information in the original, like the tabulation of
Right.
proposed buildings, but so now is there going to be 16 two-bedroom and 16 three-bedroom? Is that where we're at?
What does the tabulation say?
That was the tab. That was what we were
Okay.
Is it on there?
There's been as you know, there's been a reduction in units, so we need to revisit the exact precise bedroom count.
So I'm not sure I
See
understand.
this tab?
Maybe I can help.
please.
We moved down to 32. There was a mix in that, and in designing and looking at it, we were trying to figure the balance between those. What is clear, though, is that the number of bedrooms would not change from 36 to 32. So the number of bedrooms and the design of the system at less than 10,000, I think it was 99,000.
Is that the answer, 90?
Pardon me?
So is it 90 we're trying to get the
80.
bedroom.
It's 16 two-bedrooms and
Yes,
16
that is the current proposal. It may, when we finish the design, it may say the number of bedrooms will change, but we may have more bedrooms on this and maybe less, depending upon the mix and the balance of it. But the number of bedrooms we are proposing to stay the same.
And that number is, what I heard is 80 or 90. What is the number?
The system was designed for 90.
God, I
can tell
understand
you
what the
that.
system, what I'm asking for is, what is the number of bedrooms for this project? You can certainly build a system that has more capacity or less, so I'd like to know what the number of bedrooms is.
Then it's 90.
Well, the revised tabulation of buildings that we received with Attorney Baker's January 5th correspondence would suggest 80. And the tabulation of proposed buildings dated January 2018.
So is it 80, that is the number of bedrooms?
Attached to the letter. It's attached to Mr. Baker's letter.
Which says,
Yeah, I did say 16, 16, 2 and 4. That count adds up to 80. Do not disagree with that.
got it.
What I understood, that was part of it. In developing these plans and the change in plans, my understanding is that we are going to need the 80, I believe 90, and I'm getting the engineer to check
Sure.
it. Or that means the mix would be changed a slight bit for 10 more bedrooms within the number of units of 32.
So in other
We
words,
change a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom.
so what we have in terms of what is proposed is not accurate?
It is, right now, it is not accurate, yes.
Okay.
However, the plan shows the placeholder for the septic system is for 90 bedrooms, which is the most bedrooms that you can permit under Title V. So that's the largest system envelope that you're going to possibly see.
Right, but the number of bedrooms has an impact on more than just one issue. The number of people, the traffic, so we need to understand the number of bedrooms that are being proposed so that when we do a peer review, we're actually doing the right analysis. So what we have is the submission from council, which adds up to 80. And what I heard is that may not be accurate, that it could be something different. So we need to know what the proposal is so we can do our analysis.
That is a fair comment.
Okay.
I apologize for that. It's a matter of putting, as I said in my earlier discussions, putting all of those many pieces together. So the answer to the question, though, as we look at a revision, and we will send that revision request in, is the fact that the subsurface sewage disposal system is designed for under 10,000, 9,900, and it is designed for 90 bedrooms. We, in reducing the number of units, though, would like to maintain the number of bedrooms as originally proposed at 90. So I will have to submit a correction of that.
Got it.
Just
Yes.
one further thing on the bedroom count. I remember in the original proposal, a number of the units had lofts in them, in addition to the bedrooms. And it doesn't take much to throw up a 2x4 wall and a door, and it's a bedroom. And then you're in a whole different permitting scenario, as you know, because 90 bedrooms is 9,900 gallons per day under Title V, and 10,000 is the DEP permit threshold. So I'd like to know with the revised plan, not only the bedrooms, but if there are lofts in there as well. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, I understand the question.
Good point. So that was a long way to get to answer your question. And I know you've got more questions.
I don't know what the answer is. What is it?
So for your purposes, they're going to go up
It's
to 90
unknown,
units.
yeah.
90 bedroom.
90 bedrooms, sorry.
And to my point, the applications that we've had in the past, they typically come before us, and that way we can talk about what it is they're planning, because we have our own engineer that listens to the applicant. I happen to be a chiropractor. I'm not a septic engineer. But not typically, in all cases, bedroom counts is driven by State Title V, which is a set of regulations in which the state developed, in which you cannot exceed certain variances and parameters, because you're going to pollute the groundwater, and you're going to injure people and injure them severely. And so I'm unsure whether there was a peer review engineer that looked at this particular plan and that they came up with a count of 90-some bedrooms on 6.67 acres of land.
Well, Mr. Brennan's looked at it, but again, we haven't developed a full set of septic system plans, and that's generally not done for a 40B project until, that's usually a condition in the comprehensive permit. What we did think was important and relevant was to show the size of the soil absorption system, because we need to make sure that the site can accommodate that square footage and that that system meets the appropriate Title V setbacks and setbacks to stormwater management features that are dictated under the state stormwater management regulations. So that's what we've done.
Right. And that is part of Title V. We have setbacks of the soil absorption system where the effluent percolates into the ground, setbacks to property line, setbacks to dwellings, things like that. But you also need to look at, this is really important, especially in our town of Hingham, where, as we know, we have a water supply situation here, and that the effluent that goes into the ground through the soil absorption system, that needs to disperse. It's really the nitrogen within the effluent that needs to disperse over the land in order to diffuse the amount of nitrogen. And so typically, the difference we have between the Hingham supplemental regs, which are above and beyond the state Title V regs, is a difference based on the uniqueness of Hingham. But let's just say, well, you're coming in and you're going to go from the Title V regs, right? Because you have to do that. You have to do that. So on 6.67 acres of land, how many bedrooms do you think you can put on that? Does anyone on this side have an idea? Just throw out a number. You said 90. It's not 90.
What is it?
It's around 25.
Based on what calculation?
Based on state Title V. Take 6.65 times 40,000, divide it by 10,000, and then multiply it by 110 gallons per bedroom. And so the number of bedrooms that you can place on that particular lot doesn't appear to just.
Your calculation is based on acreage? You just mentioned acreage, right?
Yeah.
Well, I thought the calculation was based on bedrooms. This, to my understanding, that this is not in a DEP Zone 2 or a nitrogen-sensitive area because there aren't private wells on the site, so the nitrogen loading limitations you're speaking about don't apply.
The 10,000 square foot, the 10,000 square foot per bedroom loading is a state requirement. In Hingham, we have 12,500 because of the uniqueness of Hingham. And so you're saying, oh, geez, you know, this is not within a Zone 2 in which some of these things are mandated. Well, you're over 2,000 gallons, 2,000 gallons, which is per day, which is going to set you into a requiring potentially a advanced technology system. That's one thing. So we don't know whether you're going to be using denitrification technology or not. And then second, as we mentioned, there needs to be a certain amount of square footage or acreage for this effluent to disperse through. And so if you're looking at the number of bedrooms on a parcel of land, and if you're going to use the state standard of 10,000 square foot per bedroom, let's think of that, okay? Then you can only put about 25 bedrooms, maybe 26, on the lot, depending upon how it's built. In Hingham, because we have some unique characteristics, we have a stressed watershed. We have a highly susceptible groundwater condition underneath within our watershed for cross-contamination in Hingham, highly. And we also happen to have a well back in 2013 that showed more than 5 milligrams per liter of nitrogen within a production well. And so it shows that we already have a nitrogen problem within our town. And so if you would come in and talk to us, we could educate you on some of these things if it's something you don't know, and assist you with that if you're willing to take the assistance. But it seems like from the Board of Health perspective, what I would be looking at is a project that has around 21 bedrooms potentially, and for using denitrification within that particular project, because that's what we would be expecting for any particular development that would come into town.
We'd be happy to come in and have a dialogue with the Board of Health in general, but I'm confident at this point that the design, the placeholder we have for 9,900 gallons a day meets Title V. The loading, the septic, the wastewater loading meets Title V.
All right, so let's think of this. We have a difference between 90 and 25 or 26. We're way off.
Well,
so why don't we kind of put something together that we can arrive at a number that we both agree upon?
Well, the 25 and 26 is the loading limitation, if your calculation is correct, that would be required if you were in a nitrogen-sensitive area under Title V definitions, which is either an area that's in a DEP Zone 2 or an area that is nitrogen-sensitive because it's the water supply is through private wells and not a public water supply, a piped system. So there's no nitrogen loading limitation that I'm aware of for this property.
Okay, well, there we have a disagreement there. But let's talk a little bit about nitrogen loading and Zone 2, since you bring it up. And you're correct that the Zone 2 boundary does not transverse this piece of property. It's about 2,000 feet away. Okay, about that. We also know in the town of Hingham, as I mentioned, that we have an unusual situation where we have those parameters I talked about, high susceptibility, we have a stressed watershed, only 4 stressed watersheds in the entire state, 1 of 4. And we also have, as I mentioned, a production well that was taken out of service back in 2013. I'm looking at you, yeah, because it had unusually high nitrogen. And so the issue of nitrogen loading to the soil is not something that's willy-nilly and isn't going to apply with this particular project. We're going to use common sense. And so let's think about a project that's going to be somewhere between, we'd like to see safely, 21 bedrooms and maybe 25 or 26 to a state standard with some of those things that I talked about as far as a advanced technology system for denitrification, in addition to the well, we would say the 12,500 square feet per bedroom, due to the fact that we have our uniqueness in Hingham. But again, it's such a vast difference, it almost is bizarre. And so that's the questions I have for tonight, unless there's anything else you want to hear from me.
Well, this is hopefully not the last time we'll hear from you. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And just to we've got a lot to do tonight, so please, you can save that to the end. But just the applicant is aware that they are not required to go before any local boards other than the Zoning Board of Appeals. But I think as a matter of courtesy and as a matter of getting things done, many applicants in the past have gone to the Board of Health just to make sure that they are aware of local concerns. And this board is charged with making sure that the local concerns of Hingham are addressed. So, again, I appreciate the comments from Board of Health as well as from other boards. Any other public officials here who have comments or questions?
Lieutenant Kristen Apley from the Hingham Fire Department. Mr. Chairman, as it was stated, we just received the plans on January 9th, just a couple of days ago. We're only able to do a quick review of them. Did provide some comments to the board. I believe they were also sent off to the developer. As far as the road width, yes, 20 feet is the minimum requirement under the state code, under Chapter 18, 527 CMR 1. But I believe it was a federal regulation for 24 feet, so it can never go below the 20-foot width that was discussed. On Road B, I believe it is, the loop that was added in, that is the leaching field now, is that correct? Is going to be under that?
In the interior of the loop.
On the interior loop, right. Does it, on one of the plans, it seemed like it did go under a piece of the roadway. Was that correct, or?
Maybe a small portion.
Okay.
West side of the absorbent system is covered by the road. Yeah.
The concern that the fire department has is that we have the turning template available for our vehicles. We would need to see that the vehicles would be able to clear all turns in that. And the concern is that the weight of the truck on the leaching field, if it would support it by the standard. Also, you know, the same thing, we would need to see the turning template basically for every emergency turn in the property. I know you did add in the hammerhead at the bottom by the 800 feet in the secondary access. The other thing is, under the town bylaw of the fire hydrants, every 800 feet. I know there was mention of 800 feet on the roadway and everything. I believe when I looked at the plans again, I saw one hydrant that pre-existed on Ward Street, and then there was one more, I believe, that was up on Road B.
I think you're correct. We'll take another look at that.
Right, so just, I mean, we just, you know, obviously fire protection, you're gonna have to do the testing for the water anyway, so we wanna make sure that that's all covered in there. And just on the hammerheads that were put in, the emergency signs, they would have to be striped out and marked appropriately that they are, you know, a fire department turnaround, no parking, and they would need to be kept clear and maintained all year round, all seasons. I'm sure we're gonna have more comments as the plan develops. Again, this was a quick put together for us, but as it develops, we'll certainly provide more comment.
I appreciate your quick turnaround, and I recognize this is, you know, a short time to look at it, so thank you.
All right.
Any other town officials with comments or questions? Emily, do you have anything to add before I open it up to
No, not this time.
Joe, Mario? You good? Okay, so at this point, I would welcome comments or questions from members of the public. Please come up to the mic and identify yourself by your name and your residence, And please address your comments to the board and not to the applicant. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Attorney Jeff DeLisi, I'm with the law firm of Orenberger, DeLisi and Harris in Situate and Cohasset. I'm here representing Ellie Hickey and Kelly Manning, both of Autumn Circle. They also represent some of the general concerns of other folks within Autumn Circle as well. I just wanted to ask the board one question just to start, and I am uncertain, I don't know, Joe, you might have addressed it already, but what is the statutory, when is the deadline, the 180-day deadline? What's your calculation as to what that is?
Yeah, we did go over that at the last meeting, and I will ask, I'm sorry?
By extension, April 18th would be the close of the public hearing.
The close of the public hearing would be, was that April?
April 18th.
April 18th, and then we have how many days
40 days thereafter.
to issue a decision? Is that consistent with?
Yes.
Council? Okay.
Okay, great. Like the board and various town boards and departments, we just received a copy of this revised submittal as well, and so we're, in the coming days, we'll be providing additional comments and communications to the board as to our comments. But I did want to address something preliminarily, almost my general initial observations of the revised plan. In particular, the question and the concern that I have, and just about every person within Autumn Circle has, as to this new access, so to speak, or this cut-through, right-of-way, whatever you want to call it, to Autumn Circle. I understand that, you know, the past practice of the board is not to get involved in private property disputes. And I know that, at least in my mind, I have a question, and I think that there's a great question as to whether or not an easement actually really does exist here. If an easement exists, whether it's been extinguished by prescription, and in addition to that, the proposed uses, whether they overburden or overload the easement. These are all legal issues, or at least very much the last two are legal issues. But I thought that it would be helpful to the board to understand that there is case law that allows the board, and I'll share it with town council, allows the board to review these issues. And I think at least preliminarily it ought to be incumbent upon the applicant to demonstrate as part of this public hearing affirmatively with good credible evidence why it is that he believes that there is actually a legal right of access over a right-of-way off into Autumn Circle. I think that the board ought to consider requiring the applicant to come forward with that information, because if that information is not provided, then this entire process is predicated on a false reality, and the project really, should not be built for true safety reasons. So the case law is Williams v. Board of Appeals of the Town of Norwell, the Mass Court of Appeals, 86 Mass Appeals Court, 111, and it was in the year 2014. And what the court said is that while it's true that zoning authorities generally are not arbiters of title, nonetheless, the courts have recognized that permit granting authorities may find it necessary to address questions of ownership in the course of their work, where encumbrances on title do not impair the applicant's rights to prosecute the proposed development. Denial on that basis is not warranted. But when an ownership issue adversely and substantially affects the development or use of the proposed project, the reviewing board need not ignore that reality. So whether or not this matter ends up in court, which is likely, if in many instances that I could think of in my mind, I do think that as a threshold preliminary matter, this board ought to consider that issue and require that information to be provided. In addition to that, I do note, I was wondering if the stormwater calculations take into account the addition, I would imagine that they do, but I just want to confirm from Brad whether they take into account the additional roadway, which is non-locus and actually on the property of the abutter, the two abutters on Autumn Circle. I just wanted to understand that. I'm sure the board will ask that question. Additionally, and I know that many folks, I'm sure, are going to want to ask quite a bit of questions. We're very interested, obviously, on the impact that this would have on Autumn Circle, which is a devastating impact. There might be sidewalks that are proposed within the 40B. There are no sidewalks that are in Autumn Circle. Additionally, if you're talking 90 bedrooms, that's, for zoning purposes, that's 1 car per bedroom. That does not include deliveries and guests and so forth. You're talking a trip generation of hundreds and hundreds of vehicles on a daily basis. So if truly they're going to be going through Autumn Circle, there's a real problem there and a real safety issue, especially being that a road is now being put in between 2 very small, modest, single-family dwellings at the end of a cul-de-sac where children play and so forth. In addition to that, so I'm very interested to see the traffic report and analysis so that we can have our engineers take a look at it as well. I understand and recognize that an applicant on 40B is not required to go to Conservation Commission, but if the applicant is seeking approval of a portion of a road that is non-locus, the question is if that land is jurisdictional to Conservation Commission, would they have to go to Conservation in that instance? And I would think that they would, and I would tell you right now that I'm certain that the landowners who would have to be the applicants on those applications would never sign an application for a notice of intent and an order of conditions to build a roadway on their property of the manner that's been proposed. Additionally, I think that the stormwater analysis, not only with respect to the portion of the road that's on the private property, but how that affects Autumn Circle ought to be looked at. So there's a whole new component now that's non-locus that I would implore that the board make sure that the diligence is done by its peer review engineers to look at the effect of this on this neighborhood. And I think that because this roadway and this portion of this roadway is on private property, there's no way that this board could condition approval relative to those aspects of this project that make this a safe project. And if you can't condition approval, I don't think that this would be consistent with local needs. So those are my initial thoughts, and I'm sure we're going to be having quite a bit of additional commentary in the future.
Do you have anything other than this case that you wanted to present in writing at this point?
Not at this point, but I will be. Yeah.
And we'll look for something further from you in the future then. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Council.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name is Ian Ford, and I live at 29 Stanford Drive. My wife and I purchased our house 4 years ago with knowing that the septic system had failed. And I was very happy about that, actually, because I wanted to put an addition onto the house. And what I really want to point out is the fact that we worked together with the seller on what day we were going to do the percolation test. So because the seller was on the hook for making a septic system that would work. But it certainly wouldn't be fair for me to push the septic system out to an area that is in granite that would require substantial, and I'm talking substantial, from going from 20,000 maybe, or 10,000 to over 40 to maybe even $100,000 and making it not even worth me to go ahead and do the addition. So we literally had a percolation party where the town came, the Board of Health, the seller came with their representation. I was there, I came with donuts, and we all watched the hole get dug. And guess what? The first one didn't work because we hit granite. So we went to another area, and we went to another area. And eventually, we pushed it out so I could get my addition in, and an area that would not cost any more for the seller, because that wouldn't be fair, right? So my point now is, why is a septic system, quote-unquote, designed for areas that haven't even been perked yet and know where the water table is, or granite? Because we also hit granite, and that changed the project as well. It blows my mind that right now we're talking about a system being designed when you don't even know what the conditions are. Why don't you go there, dig the perk tests for all of them, know what the water's like, know what's there, and then design a system around it? In my eyes, they just blew all this money in doing calculations when it's like pie in the sky. So from a building perspective, when you start out with the foundation and you go up, you know what happens when you build a house of cards? Blow over. So my point is, I think they ought to, I don't understand why the perk tests are not all done, and they've definitively can tell us that it will work and not hurt the water. I'm dumbfounded. Thank you.
Got it. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Maureen Lynch. I live at 10 Autumn Circle. I've been there for 11 years. My husband Dennis is with me. First, I want to make it clear that we have no objections to 40B projects if they're responsible, but we do not believe that this project is responsible. We have a number of concerns, but tonight I just want to address one concern, and that is the safety of the children who live on Autumn Circle. We understand that the revised plans show ingress and egress through Autumn Circle. We have no sidewalks. Autumn Circle is a circle. The sight lines are not the best, and they're really almost non-existent when it snows. And we gave pictures to Emily the other day to show this. It would be dangerous for the number of cars that could possibly come through our street. For these kids, they walk to school on the street. They walk up to the school bus. They stand on the street at the corner of Autumn Circle and High Street waiting for the school bus. With the parents and grandparents and babysitters and siblings, it's just unfathomable to think that all these vehicles could be coming through, not to mention all the delivery vehicles and all of that. We're just extremely concerned. So just want to say that we feel this is just an irresponsible project, and we're just outraged to think that this could be a possibility, and we just wanted to state that. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you. Back there was someone else. Actually, it was someone behind you who was... Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, you guys work it out.
I have to put this down a little bit, I'm sorry. Brad Taylor, 16 Autumn Circle. A few things I've noticed here. There's on the revised plan, the wetlands, and above this L, for lack of a better term. The one thing that I haven't seen is the fact that across the street on Ward Street is an aquifer, and there's wetlands on that side. In fact, it is across the street from where these buildings are going to be built. So that is a concern, obviously. I live at 16 Autumn Circle. I live on the end where the cut-through is proposed here. There is a storm grate basically by my driveway. That basically overflows every time it rains. So any water coming that way is going to basically flood our yard and all of the houses on that end of the circle. So really, I've already addressed other things previously. Those are on these plans here.
Yep, that makes sense. Thank you.
So
Graham Madison, 12 Autumn Circle. I could echo Brad's concern living up the street. We are always constantly struggling to keep our basements dry, just given the water table in the area. The question I had, and it may be something you're going to address after this, but there were a number of things in the peer reviews that were written asking for additional information. Is there a timeline that will be developed as to when those will be received?
I mean, we have a timeline that we're working backwards from in terms of when we have to issue our decision. I mean, the peer reviewers are going to be reporting to us, and they will let us know to what extent that they still don't have their questions answered. And if we have to make a determination that the applicant has failed to provide sufficient information, we will have to make that finding. But in terms of any particular item, it's going to depend on each reviewer and their ability to proceed. But we are very sensitive to the fact that information is needed, that the information has not yet been received, and we have not had adequate time to analyze it.
That's our concern, too, is that we
Yeah.
get it and it changes, and then it might not be there, and then it might change again. So it's just a question. Thank you very much.
Got it. Anyone else? Yes.
Sorry, I just thought of one other thing. I know there is an issue with Ward Street just in terms of sightlines, potentially. Having driven down Ward Street many times in the last 4 days after we had some snow, you cannot see beyond the neighbor's driveway. It's impossible. It's around a curve. If they put the snow up on the side to clear their own driveway, it was this high. You cannot see. It's very dangerous. Thank you.
Emily, the letter received from Vanessa on January 4th, the traffic analysis, that obviously doesn't reflect this new plan with Autumn Circle being a cut.
No. His review was primarily based on the traffic impact and access study from April 2016, but he did look at the conceptual site layout,
Right.
the one sheet that you received December.
So I assume they're going to go over all that stuff
He's
because
asked,
entrance and access is going to change
Correct.
from what it was before.
He's asked for additional information. The applicant has indicated that their traffic engineer is working on a supplement.
So that, in fact,
understand that.
that's one of the reasons we don't have him here tonight.
Right, right.
That needs to be done, exactly. Anything else you want to, Joe? No. Anyone else? Did you have anything you wanted to add at this point?
Yes. Brad, you said you had some brief comments?
Sure, just in response to some of the questions from Attorney DeLisi and the citizens. I'll let Warren speak to the right-of-way question, but with respect to the stormwater question, the stormwater, or the road extension was designed so that there's a low point right in here on our property, so that the high point at the connection to Autumn Circle will be here, and this would all slope back to the intersection. And eventually the stormwater would be conveyed to the expanded stormwater detention basin. The Attorney DeLisi mentioned several hundred trips a day. The study that was prepared by Ron Mueller and Associates in April of 2016, which was based on 36 units, had a total ADT of 210 trips, so that could be under 200 at this point. And I think it's important to note that what traffic engineers typically look at is not the ADT, but peak AM and PM hour impacts. And Mr. Mueller, I'm not going to go through the conclusions of his study, but he analyzed a lot of intersections in the area. The proposed intersection would operate a level of service B, and in the peak hour, there would be an addition of only one vehicle every 3 minutes to Ward Street at the proposed intersection. Mr. Ford had a question about soil testing and had wondered why we are proposing the septic system in a location where we have no information on soils. First of all, Mr. Murphy retained us, and brought an excavator, and we did informal soil testing that is, soil testing that wasn't witnessed by the Board of Health on a preliminary basis before we designed anything throughout the entire site. So we had an indication of where the most permeable soil and most favorable groundwater conditions were. And the system that, within the envelope that's proposed, we had 6 deep holes and perk tests. So we do understand that we need to get them formally witnessed, do additional holes that are formally witnessed by the Board of Health consultant. Mr. Taylor had concerns about the sight lines, and again, in Mr. Mueller's traffic study, he indicated that the proposed sight line, or the sight lines at the intersection, exceeded AASHTO requirements, the federal guidelines that traffic engineers designed to, and they exceeded 500 feet in a northerly direction and about 450 in a southerly direction. I'm sure Mr. Mueller will speak in more detail to that when he's here after he submits his revised study. So,
yeah. If I can, and just briefly, and I'm not sure how the board wants to handle the question raised about the access to Autumn Circle. I don't know how you want to do that. We are very confident that we do have the right, either by virtue of easements, plans, or an interceding taking by the town. So the answer, I think, is the fact that we do have that access, and I'm not quite sure how you went. I'm right in the middle of why once this was designed that way. Again, as we said, the things that have to fit into pieces, but a preliminary review of it, and I'm waiting for my title report. So, but we are very confident that that is certainly an access.
I mean, my expectation at this point is that this board would not be sitting as an arbiter to make that determination, but we would be in a position to impose conditions that in fact would require that you had that access. So in fact, if you didn't, you wouldn't be able to satisfy the conditions.
That's the way I would expect, and I've seen it handled, because it is not really within, as the regs say, you don't touch things that are not within your jurisdiction. So I understand that. I didn't know whether or not you wanted more material on that, or you're just going to proceed in the way that you did and then let that be part of potentially the abutters appeal.
I mean, at this point, my expectation is that we'll consult with town council on this and see if there's anything further on the specific issue that we would expect from you.
Thank you.
But I appreciate your asking. Yes, sir.
Dennis Lynch, 10 Autumn Circle. As to the peak hours of commuting, what will that add to Autumn Circle, not Ward Street, under this proposal? Those peak hours are also the same hours that the kids walk to school. The sight lines, as I've submitted pictures from this past storm and the storm of 2015 storms, we haven't had a New England winter yet. In that one storm, they're non-existent. You cannot see around the bends, S-turns, where the kids stand. You cannot see on either side. There's no sidewalk on High Street or Autumn Circle. You're putting the children of the neighborhood in peril.
Yes, thank you.
Just a question. Do we have?
If you could just
sorry,
give your-
Steve Collins at 9 Autumn Circle. Question is around height of the units. I don't know. Do we have heights of them yet? In those plans?
Do we?
I don't think I saw that.
I don't recall that. Do you? Do you have elevations? Good question. One second. You see elevations?
It's reduced. It's hard to read. I don't know if they're more than 25. I can't read that. I don't know if you can read that.
No.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I'd ask council, do you know the answer? Do we have that information submitted in the record so far?
I'm looking at the architecturals, and I know that the units are 1.5 to 2 stories, okay, which would be, I thought that particularly the materials that had been submitted with the plan from the architect had indicated the height of the buildings.
They put it or they don't.
I can't, I've looked and I can't make that determination.
I'm pretty sure that they're...
The original set, the original set from last year.
I mean, they show,
I know, I can't read that.
I mean, yeah, even if there's an elevation, it's not showing that it's going, it's showing the 2 stories.
That's right.
Showing 2 stories
Yeah,
with
but
pretty steep
we don't know
pitched roof.
exactly.
Right. And we don't have a ridge.
So the answer to the question is, at this point, we don't believe that we have that information.
But if it's 1.5 to 2 stories.
You can certainly approximate it, but that's...
It looked to me like it's 2 stories with a steep roof.
Right.
30 feet plus.
Just to continue, and the reason I asked too is obviously with the setbacks, particularly my property, if it's going to be high, obviously that's going to have significant bearing on encroaching on our home, which is not, that far away. Thanks.
Yes, please.
Kelly Manning Collins, 9 Autumn Circle. May we ask the question of, can the town confirm that they own that property between the Bethanys and the Mullins house? Like, can the DPW confirm that that property is actually even owned by the town versus by the individuals?
What I will do is I will talk to the superintendent of highways and get the layout and the taking for Autumn Circle and see what I can determine. I'll report back to, I'll get the information to Emily.
Okay, great. Thank you. We need to talk schedule. Yes.
We just want to note that we also received a letter from Attorney Baker dated January 5th that responds to the letter prepared on your behalf by staff dated December 19th. And have a few preliminary comments on that about some inaccuracies. And I guess I will note the first one off the top of my head relates, there was a reference to a town meeting vote from August 17th of 1970, if I recall correctly. I've confirmed there was no town meeting held on that date. There was no special town meeting that year. There was only an annual town meeting. And while the reference refers to a capital T, capital M town meeting, the only record that I could find of a meeting that day that would relate to this project at all was just a planning board meeting where the planning board approved the subdivision, but it did not in any way authorize the easement as I believe you intended to suggest. So if you have any other information.
I can only say that I went back and I looked at the records during that particular period of time for the whole period and what was approved and not approved. So I believe that what I indicated to you is that the placement of the pipe into, and by the way, it drains public drainage to our private site. That's what it does right now and has done so since 1970. It already exists. It wasn't approved. It was on the plan, hence the reason I responded that way. But I'm more than happy to look at details. I believe I cited the planning board action. If there was a town meeting, that which came out of my research. So I will certainly go back and happy to comment to you.
And when you suggest that the drainage connection has been in place since the 1970s, do you mean by reference on a plan or actual in physical reality? When was it installed, I guess?
I personally don't know. I know that the plan was there, and I have been told that it currently exists. The drainage plan across the Ward Street. What time, what years were that? 70s, you think? No. Mid-2000s. Early 2000s?
Okay. I mean, I think staff will have additional comments, again, as we have more time to review the letter. Thank you for the response. I do appreciate it. I don't know if council has anything you want to add to that.
I'm just going to note that from a perspective of the interpretation of 40B and the regulations and the right of the zoning board to have its own rules and regulations with respect to 40B, that, as the board stated already, and I'll just say from a legal perspective, that I disagree for the record with Attorney Baker's interpretation of the extent that the board may require supplemental information with its own rules and regulations. And it's not consistent not only with 40B, but consistent with the ability of local rules and regulations to interpret and be promulgated pursuant to the state law or regulation.
Got it. Schedule. Today's the 11th.
Might I ask the applicant, or do you know, since we're trying to target future hearing dates, when we might receive the supplemental traffic analysis?
I don't know how quickly he's going to get it done. Certainly within a couple of weeks from today.
Okay, so I would just suggest that we be aware of our civil engineer's schedule when you pick the next hearing date, because it seems like we might have his next presentation prior to traffic.
We know what that's good.
No, but he's here,
Oh,
so he can weigh in
yeah,
on
okay.
that.
I thought you had like
Yeah, no.
an understanding.
No.
But I would not want this to push out beyond 2 weeks. Because we've got a lot to cover, and I want to make sure we get it done. So we're talking the week of the
22nd.
The 22nd. What is there a date that is bad for you that we should avoid? I'm sorry? Okay. I don't think we have any other zoning board meetings
that
scheduled that week.
Nope.
What's your schedule? Do we could do 2 weeks from tonight on the 25th? Does that work for you, Emily?
Mr. Chairman, can I speak about the timeline here? I'm just trying to understand, Ms. Pat, are you waiting for more information from us before you complete your thorough review? I know you asked for soil testing information. This is not something we're going to turn around in a week, and that's not going to give you enough time to review it in connection with the hydrologic calculations that we've already submitted. You're asking for flow testing information, so I don't, if he's in the process of reviewing our current set of calculations, 2 weeks might be appropriate, but I can't dump something on him a date 2 days before the next meeting and expect any.
Yeah, and my intention is to review the information that was submitted this week, prepare a letter on that. They know the other information that I'm looking for. As long as we get it at some point, the fire flows, they're not going to do that, and they need favorable weather to do that. They can't do it when it's freezing out. So, and the test holes too. So I understand that, but I will review the information that's been prepared, give you a good comprehensive technical review, and within that review, I'll just reiterate whatever else is missing at that time.
And then for Jeff Dirk on transportation?
He typically, we would need 10 business days ideally for him to review whatever's submitted, and it sounds like we might get something in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I certainly can confirm it tomorrow with him again what his timing would be.
Yeah.
But as I sit here today, I can't tell you that it could be any sooner than 2 weeks.
So we maybe want to pencil in a further hearing date 2 weeks after that, and then check in on the 25th to see whether we've received the information.
I'm not comfortable with these indeterminate dates when we have a deadline at the end that it has not been moved. So I think we're going to hold it to the 25th, and if we have to wind up saying that the applicants failed to provide information in sufficient time, that will be our determination. But we've asked and have not gotten extensions on the outside deadline, so working backwards, we need to keep going. And so I think our next meeting is going to be at the 25th at 7 p.m. And if it winds up that the experts say, hey, guess what, we couldn't do it, then that's going to go into the record. But, you know, we've had assurances that we'd get information in the past. It hasn't come. And at the same time, we have a statutory deadline that has not been waived. So we need to proceed. 25th is good for you?
Yeah.
Yep.
Good for you?
It's good for me.
Just one quick comment, and I appreciate that, and I respect that. I do want to comment when you said that the statutory deadline has not been waived. It has. We extended it from the last meeting we had to this meeting and extended that period of time, so we have done that. What I didn't do is have an arbitrary, I don't know how, 40, 50 days extra, which may end up become a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, when you have that much time, you take that much time or a little bit more. So my concern was a certain degree of efficiency, and I know that you respected that. As you know, it's been a 17 months in delay to get back to this point, and that was not our doing. Sure. So the answer to the question is we're trying, and when changes are made, you're right, it does take time to put those pieces together. We felt that we had too short a time to do that, and some of the comments where I didn't have time were a result of the fact that I'm not sure we got what we wanted. However, I'm going to leave that right where it is. But keeping a strict schedule, we're with you. I had also indicated to you that if there was a situation in which we needed or you needed more time, based upon, you know, the fact of some material or something like that, we're not adverse to working with you to make sure that this board has all the information to render its decision.
Okay, well, sounds like we'll find out at the next meeting if we've gotten sufficient information to move forward. Anything else you need like that? Okay, so then I will accept the motion to continue this hearing to the 25th of January at 7 p.m.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. 1 second. Now that's been seconded.
With respect to the question of the easement and the case law that Attorney Delisle provided, do you wish that I review this case, review kind of the cases referenced in here? Because I see it does, in making the portion he read refers back to another. Do you want, what, if anything, do you want? Because you mentioned conferring with counsel on that question. So I'm just looking for direction as to what you would like on that.
Yes, so the board would like the advice of counsel as to whether or not we need to go and look at this, at the legal question as part of our determination, or whether or not it's sufficient simply to have it as a condition.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You've got a motion, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. It's approved. We are continued to the 25th at 7 p.m. Thank you for everyone's indulgence. Emily, do we have...
Do you have meeting minutes?
Do you want to do that?
I was here, please. I read them. Yeah.
Do you want to do that on TV?
Okay, thank you. Question. I understand what you're saying is that...
Pat, thank you very much. Nice short one tonight, though, huh?
You guys?
So you can just take the conversations outside. We'd appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
We're all excited.
We're going to get you a sidearm.
I'm just trying, I'm like looking at the clock, I'm like, we're going to get home before 9, Joe.
Emily, on the minutes for December 11th, public comment, you have Steve Blank.
Oh, we should fill that in.
God, Joe.
Hold on, what's his address?
44 North 22 Station Street.
Oh, a Benny.
So you'll fill that in, okay.
Thank you. Wow, that was impressive. Seriously? That's funny, that should have... Fixed.
Okay.
I don't think you guys need me anymore, right?
I'm sorry?
You don't need me anymore, do you?
We always need you.
Stay for minutes?
So the minutes for November 14th, 2017. Are there any, Robin, do you have any comments? Okay, so I'll accept the motion to approve the minutes of November 14th, 2017.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
You can't say. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, November 17th meeting, November 14th is approved. Minutes of December 11th, 2017. Provided that we have the name added on the second page, I would accept the motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are approved for December 11th, 2017 meetings. Anything else you'd like us to cover?
That's it.
I will accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved. Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Now you can talk.
Joe and Robin in particular, since you're up.